Everyone. My name is Jen O'Sullivan, and I'm a board certified naturopath. I'm here to help you understand a little bit more about colors and what that looks like for you to be able to communicate better. Now, when I started learning about personality traits, many of the personality tests that we took as kids and growing up were to help us better understand ourselves. But as I got older, I realized that many of these tests are really helpful to study the different types so that you can better understand others and that you can speak with them more clearly in their language rather than forcing your personality on them. So where did this come from? Well, back in the 300 BC time area, you've got Hippocrates and Plato, and they really studied and came up with this concept of these different personalities like melancholy and phlegmatic, sanguine, choleric, these different personality types. And when they moved forward, there was this guy called Empedocles, so I'm probably pronouncing his name right, but he was in 440 BC, and he came up with this concept of that earth, wind, water, and fire. So these were used to describe personality types and kind of how people were maybe within their constitution, right? So if they were sickly or if they were strong, firm constitution. But when we get into more some of the more modern, right? So there's a lot of modern things that have kind of come about where you're looking at the different personality types. You can see that they all relate back to this whole like choleric was one who was assertive and decisive. The sanguine is one who is optimistic and full of hope. The phlegmatic is one who was a calm pleaser. And the melancholy is one who was that perfectionist with really high standards. And so when we fast forward to, say, Carl Jung, or Jung, however you'd like to pronounce that, Carl Jung, basically had a different approach through psychology and psychiatry. This was an analytical psychology. And what he kind of came up with were these types of thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And then in 1928, moved forward with Marston, and he published a book called Emotions of Normal People. And his theory was based on a combination of Plato and Empedocles. And he claimed that there were these that your environment can trigger various strengths and weaknesses within a personality. So, I mean, all these kind of people made these different, kind of added to this whole thing. And what's interesting is these personalities for him came out at Marston described them as dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance, right? So that's that DISC assessment that then Walter Vernon Clark came up with and is widely used today. So now you fast forward to Myers-Briggs type, 1960s. It was a mother-daughter combo, and they really kind of expanded on that even more with the personality types like INTJ or ESFP, right? These stem from this extrovert or introvert, sensing information or being intuitive, making decisions based on thinking or feeling, and looking at the world through judgment or perception. So, it's an interesting thing that it just kind of, you could get really really into all of this. But other personality tests that emerged over the years, such as like the 4 temperaments, that was really integral. And then, some other ones that were notable changes that came around with the colors. So some of you are familiar with color tests. That was Mark Aceta came up with that in like 2010. And so he did this whole thing that got really popularized. Then you've got people coming out with things about animals, like different animals that you can relate to. I personally do my own based on children so that you can kind of say, okay, what am I based on children? You've got different people in your lives that act a certain way, and you could kind of think of them as a 5-year-old. And I think of them as like the director, the little cruise director going around directing everybody, the chatterbox, the helper, the little helper, and the questioner. So that, with color theory, you get into understanding, a red is this kind of aggressive personality type that's a director, that they want to lead people regardless of whether anybody wants to follow them or not. Then you get the blues that are also kind of natural leaders, but they're more chatterboxes. They love to talk. They love to tell stories. There's all sorts of things about them that are strong as well. There's strengths and weaknesses in both. You got the little helper. Those are the yellows of the world, the people that really want to help people. They are, teachers and nurses oftentimes. You get the questioner, the people who are always asking questions constantly, and those are the greens of the world. Those are the people who love numbers, love analytical things. They're quieter. So when you look at introvert versus extrovert, you've got, reds tend to be more introverted on the spectrum of leadership, but they're more aggressive, whereas blues tend to be more extroverted on the spectrum of leadership and more fun and like to party. Whereas like the little helpers, the yellows, those are more extroverts within the calmer of the two, whereas the greens are more introverted in nature. So when you look at the spectrum of colors, especially as it relates to looking at network marketing, and that's a thing, because when you start to understand that if you're a red talking to a yellow, you're going to have a hard time. If you're a blue talking to a green, there's going to be a complete disconnect, okay, and vice versa. So, how do we talk with one another, and how are we able to speak each other's language and share something that you may have for them that is in their language rather than yours? And so when you look at the spectrum of people, we've found that about 50% of people in network marketing are yellows, 25% are green, 15% are red, and 10% are blue. So what does that look like? Well, in network marketing, you see oftentimes people having a class or a party. So if you invite a green who loves analytical things and loves, to really research things to a party, they will decline you immediately, okay? They would much rather go to a class. Now, on the flip side of that, if you invited a blue to a class, they would be like, no, thank you. That does not sound like fun. So again, it's like, how do you determine? So when looking at a red and a yellow, they can kind of go either way. They're fine with classes and parties. But that's the thing. Most of the time, if you think about a red, they might not want to go to a party, but they will if there's something in it for them. So what I'd like to do, though, is go over with you these colors in more detail, just to kind of help you understand how to kind of look at these a little bit more. So I'm going to give you some visuals to help you as well, because I'm always really good at remembering things visually. There are animals that you can put to these. A friend of mine does marine animals. I've heard of birds as well. So when you think about, say, a blue. So the blue color personality type is fun. They're the ones that want to have a lot of fun. They love people. They're extroverts. Those are people that just are people pleasers, blue sky, like they want to be outside. They're dreamers. So I often think their heads are in the clouds. They love to party. Everything is sky's the limit, right? So they just have a lot of fun, and they're always go, go, go. And I'm going to get into some differences in each of them. So I'm just going to give you the basics right now, so you can start thinking about what you might think you are, and then start thinking of some people, loved ones in your family that might be something like this. Okay, so a green. Green, I think of a green blade of grass. Okay, so it's like the smallest detail that we tend to walk on and we don't even care about. A green personality would really be interested in all the details about green blade of grass, like a blade of grass. Okay, so they like details, even in things that are often overlooked. So they want to know how it got there, how it works, why it works that way, how it affects them. Like they really want to know, and they kind of put it all in a chart. Okay, and so they're going to want to know every single detail. Yellows, I think in terms of like yellow labs, they're happy and fun, and they're not like a blue where they're just kind of all over the place. They're just those fun, loving people. They love people. They're very loyal and caring. And that's like a yellow lab, right? They want to help whenever they can. They're just like, here I am. What can I do, to please you? So people pleasers, yellows. Reds, I think of red fire. Those are the people that are hot. They can be very sparky, they can cause flames, and they can be fierce, and they can demand attention, but they can also bring a lot of light and truth to situations, right? So part of it, though, is what are you and what percentage of each one are you? Because as women, so men sometimes can be real specific into a specific color pattern. Like if they're hardcore red, they just kind of stay in that hat, whereas women tend to be able to wear different hats. And you know this, like when Mama Bear comes out, your red can come out. You could be a complete yellow and just this fun-loving people pleaser, want to help everybody, soft spoken, and all of a sudden somebody does something against your kids, and watch out, your voice raises, you get fierce, and you can put that red cap on. Some of you understand what it means to put a yellow cap on, like we just got to be quieter now, or we got to kind of help out and not be so involved in being the center of attention, right? Because blues and reds like to be the center of attention. Blues tend to, when you think about putting a different hat on, some of you, I can be blue right now. I'm gonna, unwind a little bit and talk more and be more fun, right? Some of you that are hardcore greens, none of that makes sense to you because you're just black and white. Everything is black and white, one way or the other, and we're just gonna get things done. So it just is interesting. But again, some people are chameleons. You can be some of each. So let's start with understanding a blue personality types. Their strengths. They're fun. They're bubbly, they're talkative, they're optimistic, they love to be trendy, they're usually creative, they're enthusiastic, they're spontaneous, they're peace-loving, and they're fearless. So they really do love meeting new people. They're happy on the outside. They love all the motions. So when you hear people say all the feels, that's them. They're usually the life of the party, and they're at every party. They love to collaborate with people. They're real passionate, outdoor people, adventure seekers, motivated by rewards. They like fun rewards, like let's go on a trip. And they're really great at last minute rallying. Okay, so that's a blue. Let me go over their weaknesses, though. They tend to dominate the conversations. You really can't get them to shut up, okay? Sometimes they're very forgetful, and they'll be late to things, like time doesn't really make sense to them, and they could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours late to things, and it wouldn't even faze them. So they're usually not early. They're usually not even on time. It's got to be something real specific for them to be on time. They get real distracted easily. They get bored easily. Rules to them are only suggestions. So they won't show anybody else their inside turmoil. So blues often have a lot going on inside, but they won't show you because they're happy on the outside. They're not real good with silence. So they're the people that have to have music always in the background or a TV on. They're also not great with conflict. They don't like conflict, and they shy away from it. And they will often start new projects before finishing another one. So that's always fun. So how do you communicate with a blue? Well, blues appreciate people who give them lots of encouragement. So giving them compliments, encouraging them. It's best for people to share, if you're trying to share with a blue, by using stories, because you got to hold their attention, So also show a blue the potential for meeting new people and the incredible community that your team that has to offer. Blues love energetic groups and cultures. So if there's nothing exciting or fun about your meetings or gatherings, guess what? They're just not going to show up. So think that through when you've got a blue friend. How do you make it how do you make your offer to them inviting? Okay, let's talk about greens. Their strengths. They're analytical. They tend to be more reserved. They're planners. They're loyal. They're super smart, usually quiet, very logical, very methodical. They like to be alone, and they like precision. They're usually able to find an answer if you give them enough time. They love graphs and numbers. They like to be behind the scenes. They also need to understand the why and the how of things. They don't like the spotlight. They are very direct when necessary, but they like detailed systems. They like to know all the details, and they're motivated by learning more, and they like to be on time. And they're usually the people that would say, on time is late, 15 minutes early is on time. Okay. Their weaknesses is they have analysis paralysis. They can often be very judgmental, and they play it safe all the time. They complain a lot internally. So if you're a loved one of a green, they complain to you because they feel like you're a safe space. They complete tasks very slowly, and they can often be too much of a perfectionist. They don't work well under pressure, so don't put any pressure on them. And they often feel superior than everybody else, and they don't like change. So how to communicate with the green? Greens appreciate people who give them time to come to a conclusion on their own time, rather than forcing them to make a decision. So they like people to point them in the right direction and give them information if you can. Green, like, give them the charts and the graphs and the flyers and the studies and all that. Greens want an honest, direct, helpful, and true approach with all the details. So showing them graphs and charts are great, but showing them like iffy before and after pictures or iffy testimonials that like they'll find holes in them. So the greens are the ones that will say, wait a minute, you said this, but then over here you said this, and those don't match up, and they'll call you out on it. So those are our greens. When we look at our yellows, which are most of the population in a direct sales environment, they're the helpers. They're more agreeable. They're very kind. They're purpose driven and people driven. They're very loyal. They're a great team player. They like to be prepared, and they love a good cause. They're very humble and happy, and they follow systems well. They are mostly motivated by helping others. Really good with creative and good ideas. They like to create good ideas, and they like to kind of be a part of that. They always put their family first. They enjoy smaller social gatherings to like larger parties, but they make really great hostesses. So that's a good one. And they're excellent at relationship building. They are able to communicate with kindness. They like helping others achieve goals. So they like, they'll help somebody else rank up before they do. And they will follow strong ethical leaders, and they like to being part of a group effort. So what are their weaknesses? They avoid conflict at all cost. They won't have any of it. They dislike any arguments. They take rejection very personally. They're sometimes overly sensitive, and they often try to please everyone at the expense of themselves. So they can easily bottle up anger or this frustration that they're having, only to erupt later, and it confuses everybody because it's not in their typical personality. But when they erupt, look out. Competitions can be overwhelming, so they just won't even play. They tend to be judgmental or materialistic people, which you wouldn't necessarily think that's true, but they are on the inside, which is interesting. They're judgmental about materialistic people. So they tend to like pass judgment on money and people who have flashy things. And they back off when there's confrontation, like immediately. So how do you communicate with a yellow? First and foremost, slow down and use softer tones. Okay, that's a really important thing. So if you're a red or a blue, you have got to slow your roll, and you've got to lower your tone. They enjoy conversation that's a give and take without being rushed. So they love small talk. Reds and greens hate small talk. So blues and yellows are good with small talk. Yellows basically desire others to be honest and authentic, and give them lots of encouragement in areas that they feel they need help with. Show a yellow that they can accomplish their goals and cheer them on. Really, the best way to communicate with a yellow is to show them how they will be helping people to improve their lives. So if you can show a yellow how this is going to help their best friend's neighbor's child, like it's like removed. You're thinking, why not your own? Yes, that too, but I want to help everyone. So if you can show them the grander picture, they'll be all about it. So last but not least is our reds, and reds are driven leaders, assertive. They can be visionaries, very direct, confident, risk takers, goal oriented. They have very thick skin. They're okay with change. They're an overachiever, so they like to get stuff done. They like the spotlight. They love being challenged. They tell the truth, even if it hurts. They take initiative and is a self-starter. They do great under pressure. They have great follow through. They make good use of their time. They are fine with confrontation, and they usually have a competitive edge. The weaknesses of reds are that they're often very impatient. They dislike small talk, so that can come off as pretty rude. They can be arrogant. They can also be too aggressive, and they act too quickly. They're often too competitive, motivated by money. They can change direction too fast. They often feel superior to others. They're often too confrontational, and they can be a complainer. So you can see some of the strengths and weaknesses kind of overlap in some areas where you've got some reds and greens have some similarities. Reds and blues have some similarities. Yellows and blues have some similarities. Yellows and greens have some similarities, right? It's an interesting thing when you start seeing some of the similarities in strengths and weaknesses, but there's a personality type that is leaning in one way. So when you start to look at all of them, so let's go over how to communicate to a red first, and then when you start to look at all of them, you can kind of decipher how to communicate with them. But reds appreciate people that just get to the point, like fast. So again, if you're a yellow and you're small talking, they will, or blue, they do not have time for blues. They just will not get to the point. They just talk too much. So reds don't usually like blues, which is interesting. And blues usually don't like reds because the blues think, gosh, can't they just like calm down and enjoy life? So it's an interesting battle there. But you have to get to the point and tell a red what's going to benefit them. They want lots of compliments as well. So they're people that thrive off of compliments, and they thrive off of people asking for their advice and their opinions. You can recruit a red by asking them for advice on how they would run your business if they were you. Like, right? Because they're arrogant. They think that they could do a better job. Indirect suggestion works best with a red. So give them space to do it on their own rather than telling them how to do it. So hopefully that's helpful. And there's specifics to recruiters to recruiting each color, but like blues, focus on the trips and the people and the fun and the activities. With greens, focus on the research and the efficacy of things, and talk about classes that you're going to have and how much they're going to be able to learn, right? Direct them to all of the studies. How to recruit a yellow, they're the mamas of your team, so get them on board with helping out. Like, say, you need their help. Can they help with whatever task you want? With admin stuff, they'll do whatever. They love helping, but get them coming to classes and helping be the mom that comes and opens the door and like helps people get drinks, and they just love them. But share with them how they can get involved in that way, and that they could help a lot of people. And then with reds, how you would recruit a red is just show them the money. I know that sounds crazy, but they're numbers people from the perspective of how is this going to help me in the long term, in the short term, what's in it for them. Give them space and permission to do it the way they want to do it, but show them the stuff and let them go, right? Don't tell a red what to do. Just tell them like, hey, this is something that can work for you here, try it. And let them, they'll research it. Just give them a little bit of information, compliment them, ask for their advice. It's like really important. So there's so many different things that we can get into this. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what it looks like to kind of communicate with them and how to best communicate with each one, and try it out, and you don't have to be exact with somebody. You can say, oh, I think that person's a blue because they're scatterbrained all the time. They talk a lot and they squirrel, right? They're constantly like, different topic. Okay, we're going over here. They never finish anything. They're always late. They're kind of a train wreck, right? Whereas you look at a red who might have that same energy of leadership and like, just wanting the spotlight, because that's a blue as well. But the red's going to be always on time. They're always put together. You're not going to see anything out of place on them. There's a difference there because they're a little bit more, arrogant in what they look like, right? Their makeup won't be messed up, their hair won't be out of place, right? That's the difference that you can tell. Blues don't care. They just want the party. Reds don't like to party. So there's a difference there. Reds are more introverted, blues are more extroverted, where when you're looking at a yellow versus a green, yellows are the helpers. They're the ones that are just quieter and they're more sensitive. And if you get a bunch of yellows in a room and say, hey, can we all decide what we're going to where we're going to go to lunch, nobody wants to make a decision because everybody wants somebody else to make a decision. Oh, you decide. Oh, you choose, right? It's that. Whereas the greens are just the quiet ones in the corner that are they're not going to say anything because it's all in their head and they all think we're all crazy. They all think they're right and we're crazy. So just know that they're the analytical types that are going to be the smartest in the room, most likely, but they're not going to say that. I'm not going to say anything. They just think we're all morons. So it's just, I'm using some aggressive terms there. If you can't tell already, I'm a red. And I love speaking from behind this lens because I'm really more of a let's get things done right to the point. But I can put my yellow cap on and I can put my green cap on. I very rarely put my blue cap on sometimes. So that's it. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys, and you'll be able to kind of move forward a little bit more confidently. I'll put some links in the bottom of tests you can take that are free online, just so you can see. I mean, there's a bunch when it comes to all of this. So again, Jen O'Sullivan, I'm a red. Nice to meet you, and have a blessed time. So I hope this was helpful. All right, take care, everyone.